FOMO 3D launch date announced, or at least leaked. This seemed to fly by a lot of people, but I'm going to show you where it was actually leaked, when we might see FOMO 3D launch. And it sounded pretty dead on, so um, interesting times. Now, those of you who don't know what FOMO 3D is, I will talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk about power of weak hands, which was kind of the beginning of all of this with Ethereum smart contracts. But I really want to address those of you that are waiting for this launch date to be announced. Now, before I show you that, let me just run through a few things to kind of catch people up that may have been out of the loop or they've heard about this. It all started with Power of Weak Hands, POWH, and their tokens called P3D. This represents an Ethereum smart contract. It's a game that tests weak hands and rewards strong hands. And in other words, a lot of people are trading all these different altcoins, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and you see people with weak hands. Those are the people who sell early. And oftentimes they're the ones who get punished, right? Because they sell because it's going down, 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 whatever the cryptocurrency or Bitcoin is. And then they're said to have weak hands because they can't take it. And then, often they lose because the Bitcoin or cryptocurrency will often take off right after someone with weak hand sells. I'm sure some of you have experienced it. That's the kind of the premise of the game, is that if you have strong hands, is this P3D tokens going up and down, you win. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail later, but I want to get closer to the point of when FOMO 3D is said to be launching. I do want to just kind of let you know, some call this a pyramid scheme. I'm going to be addressing that issue. It is definitely not a pyramid scheme. You might think it's a scam, but it's not a pyramid scheme. It's definitely a scheme, but schemes aren't necessarily bad. We're going to talk a little bit about that too. Yeah, I see a lot of people just totally getting that wrong. So we saw, those of you know what's going on, just kind of catching everybody else up, we saw all these clones start spreading like wildfire, and it really kind of looked like it was threatening the model, because all these people were copying, these developers were copying their smart contract, the original Power of Weak Hands smart contract, coming out with all these ridiculous newly branded versions of it, which got people to sell out of Power of Weak Hands and move into these other programs. And that just kind of added to this concept that it's a pyramid scheme or it's a scam, because the culture was just kind of crazy. But again, I'll talk a little later about how that doesn't mean that Power of Weak Hands is a scam or a pyramid scheme. It's neither, and I'll talk about why. But the clones definitely, some of them were scams. Some of them definitely behaved like pyramid schemes. I'm not going to talk in detail about them, but that it kind of just fostered this belief that Power of Weak Hands was a pyramid scheme. I was going to say that the clones are running out of steam. I mean, maybe they'll kind of trickle here or there. They're just kind of multiplying and diluting themselves. Kind of a ridiculous kind of movement in my mind. But hey, those of you that are playing those, I'm not going to judge what you guys are deciding to do with your time and energy. But just kind of speaking to those of you who want to have kind of a more serious game plan. Maybe you're putting your resources into cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. But you have these little projects on the side that you think are fun. That's cool if you want to go ahead and put resources and time and energy into some of the more scammy type projects. I'm not saying that all of the clones necessarily were, but it sounded like a lot of them were. I just want to encourage you to consider putting a portion of your energy into plugging into a little bit more marketing and intelligent marketing behind it all. For example, the system that I use generates leads for me, and then I can promote these kinds of things. I don't put my emphasis just on these little programs jumping around from here or there. I mean, you could certainly do that, but I approach it in a more systematic way and focus on generating leads. And it puts me in a position where if I want to promote something, first of all, it allows me to be a lot more selective and not so desperate. Because it really does look kind of desperate. I'm not saying that everyone doing the clones are desperate, but it looks that way, and I think you can understand that. I mean, the branding for Pooh and all these ridiculous clones, and I think the people promoting them often admitted they were ridiculous. You can kind of rise out of all of that and the need for that if you plug into a system that generates leads and systematizes the process of promoting things that you can be more selective about, and it allows you to really generate a lot of crypto in a way that takes a lot less energy and is a lot more effective. But anyway, uh, from my perspective, looks like the clone's running out of steam. Maybe they'll keep going, but I really would never get tied up in those things. It's just not necessary for me. Right now, the community is awaiting the launch of FOMO 3D, and I want to show you that this launch date was actually leaked by one of the developers today, or actually a few hours ago, which would have made it yesterday by my time zone. This is the 22nd of May. So I'm going to share that with a second, exactly what he said and who is there that didn't correct him. Looks like it was leaked. For those that don't know, just real quick, FOMO 3D is a game. It's a game that it is completely different from Power of Weak Hands, but it works with it. In other words, when they launch, this is fear of missing out. When they launch FOMO 3D, it said that you're going to be able to stake with your P3D. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So people are going to pay to play, apparently, this new game, and the winners take all. Apparently, there's lots of winnings that people can have. And again, I'm not encouraging guys to do this or not do it. I just kind of, I'm interested in what's happening in the market, and there's reasons for those that don't get it. Like, it's beyond the games. It's beyond what Power of Weak Hands is today. What attracted me to all of this was what the smart contracts represent and this whole ecosystem that they're creating. So the vision's much bigger. And I know that a lot of people miss that part, that judge the Power of Weak Hands or FOMO 3D movement. Anyway, spectators is what I was saying. Spectators can stake on the game. I'm kind of speculating here. They didn't give a lot of detail purposefully because they don't want clones and people to go copy their ideas. But spectators can stake on the game, the FOMO 3D, when it comes out. And I think you can use P3D to stake on it. And I think you're rewarded in the sense that you can win, but you can't lose. And I might be wrong on that, but I've seen them say something like that. And some of you might have your own concept for what the FOMO 3D game is going to be about and how people with P3D will benefit. I don't want to get too much into that because I want to talk about the testnet, which is said to be launched next weekend. So again, I'm recording this on May 22nd, and it was said that the testnet will actually launch next weekend. So look at the people that said this and who was there and didn't correct them. So Crypto Knight, who's one of the people involved with this, shared what some punk said, who's one of the developers, and he's just kind of responding in a dialogue, but he says, pretty good, we figured out some issues that we're working on fixing right now so that we can plug the UI and have it work with the contract. Hopefully we can deliver public testnet during next weekend then. So this is the first time I've seen this leaked. They talked about FOMO 3D being launched in May, but a lot of people were starting to have doubts as the days went on and got deeper into May. I was kind of surprised, at 10 p.m. Pacific time, just a few hours ago on May 21st, I saw this pop up and nobody really seemed to notice it, which was interesting. And look who was all there. Justo was there, which is one of the core developers. He didn't correct it. I've seen him come in and correct things that were said if they were wrong, because they've been kind of keeping this hush-hush and not wanting to talk about when the launch date was going to be. P3D bot was there. He didn't correct it. And here, Justo Bot, who was there when this was said, is one of the core developers. Some punk who said it is one of the developers on the list. Crypto Knight, who shared it, is one of the community staff, and P3D bot was there, and he's one of the community staff. So I would say that this is kind of a big deal. And the first time that they've talked about being close, I think they see people getting antsy, and it looked like they kind of leaked it out there, in their typical sort of way, where they really don't like to be exuberant about it. But I don't know what next weekend means. Does it mean this coming weekend or the following weekend? So we will see. JustoBot had made a few other posts around the same time. This is 11:19 p.m. And this isn't regard to the launch, but I want to now kind of talk a little bit about, some of the details and the subtleties behind this project that I think a lot of people miss And a lot of people just don't understand, which is what has attracted me to this. Um, I'm also going to show you uh, one of the case study accounts that is on the 15th of number 15 in the list of P3D holders. I'm going to talk about how the P3D works a little bit more, what's happened with that for those that have kind of been out of the loop, and just get a little bit into more detail about, why is this definitely not a pyramid scheme? I can tell you that definitively. I can prove it to you. And why people get it wrong when they think that it is, and what all this means, where this is all leading in terms of what they're building that's much bigger, that is what attracts me to this. I'm not just interested in what's here right now. I'm interested in what these guys are developing and what it represents and what they're creating next in the ecosystem that's going to develop and what that means. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But there's a lot of integrity behind these core developers that created Power of Weekends and they're creating FOMO 3D, and that's the first thing I look for that attracts me to a project. Here, JustoBot, was responding to somebody. He said, something I do want to mention. He said, I promise it won't just randomly drop. We'll have a countdown for sure. So he was, answering to somebody that was worried that when it does launch, is there going to be a countdown? So those that are watching and concerned that you might miss it, they're promising they'll have a countdown. So just check in. For those of you who have an account with Power of Weekends, just check in a lot, check in on the Discord, and it sounds like there's going to be plenty of warning. Now, here's something else I just randomly pulled out to kind of show the integrity and something that's been very consistent with these guys. They're not like hyping things up, and they never promise something that they can't deliver. And here's something. Somebody was asking, what his prediction was going to be on the price. Like, they don't hype things up. He says, I don't predict things. I just tell you what it's designed to do. And it's a very matter-of-fact way of presenting what they offer that I think is in very high integrity. And again, why this is not a scam. Now, we'll talk about how we know it's not a pyramid scheme, which is a different issue, although most people consider all pyramid schemes scams. I'm going to show you definitively why it's not a pyramid scheme at all. It's definitely not a scam, though, because scams mislead. And these guys aren't doing anything that could be considered misleading. Now, some people can remember back to the lending platforms, some of the high yield investment programs. Some of them just downright misled. Others, like, just kind of, even though they might have said there's no guarantees, the culture that they fostered and created, some of those other programs that end up burning people, so the culture they created definitely misled, even if they might have had in their fine print in their agreements that there's no guarantee of returns and so forth. There are programs that did that, but then the culture they fostered created this hypey culture where people expected big returns, and their whole model was set up to create that expectation. I would consider those borderline scams, and that was a lesson that I learned with some of them that were really good at it, at misleading that way. But this doesn't do that at all, and this is just an example of that. They're really matter of fact. They describe what their smart contracts are designed to do, but they don't get exuberant about it. They don't exaggerate, and they don't create or foster in any way. In fact, to an incredible point, in fact, they don't create or foster a culture that makes people think that they're going to get something that can't be promised, that there's a guarantee of something. And that's when we start to know that it's not a pyramid. And I'll talk about that in more detail and make that more definitive in a minute. And then something else that I thought was interesting that he said around the same time, FOMO 3D was a completed concept before P3D was released. So this is something they've been working on for a long time, because a lot of people were concerned, are you really going to be able to get this done so quickly? But they have been reassuring everybody, and they did it again just today, that this is something they've been working on a long time. And what they're focused on right now is just making sure that it's audited, that everything's going to work and function the way it should. Something else, and this gets into the vision and why I'm attracted to all this project, this bigger ecosystem being built here, and where this can all go that can really boost the value of P3D and make the FOMO 3D project interesting, and just make it interesting to follow what these guys are doing. They're going to be launching an SDK, which is a soft, for those of you who aren't techies, and I'm not, I'm a marketer. So forgive me, techies. I know the community of P3D is more tech oriented, but quite frankly, you're going to want to tap into marketers and people who can break these things down in a way that reaches beyond the tech minds. If you really want to see, the economy grow and expand beyond just techies. So forgive me for my language and my framing, but I really try to communicate this in a way that I would understand it and others would understand it. But anyway, yeah, I'd heard of an SDK, but I didn't know what it meant. It's a software development kit, typically a set of software development tools that allow for the creation of applications for a certain software package, software framework, hardware, platform, computer system, video game console, et cetera. So basically they're creating an SDK so other developers are going to be able to create applications that plug into all of this to create this ecosystem. And this is what's coming out next, as far as I understand, with FOMO 3D or shortly after. And there's much more to come. And this is really the part that I know outsiders looking in, looking at kind of the ridiculous, you know, culmination of all these clones that copied Power of Weak Hands, or people that kind of looked at Power of Weak Hands and P3D as a pyramid type thing, which I could see why someone might get that confused. They're not seeing what the bigger deal is that's going on in terms of this whole ecosystem that they're creating, of not just their own smart contracts that provide these opportunities for people, and now it's spinning into games that people are going to be engaged with, that create opportunities for onlookers and an audience. It's just this whole ecosystem. But now this SDK, this kit for developers to be able to expand on that in an exponential sort of way and have that all feed back and be connected to P3D and FOMO 3D perhaps, and just be tied into their entire ecosystem. I don't know all the details, but it is worth watching if you haven't been. Again, to talk about the culture and to also lead us into the pyramid discussion, because I think it's so important for people to understand this. Someone had posted that was new. Hi, guys, just around the same time. Hi, guys. Just a general question. This is my first smart contract I've been involved in. I've been digging deeper the last few days, checking out vids, etc. Are smart contracts, specifically 3D, a better investment option? Now, these guys actually, talk about this. Not, some people do refer to it as an investment option. The developers refer to it as a game, which I think is an important distinction. Anyway, he's asking if it's a better investment option if comparing it to, say, Bitcoin mining, as in BitClub Network. Appreciate some advice, looking for something that's worth my time and investment. So tired of all the crypto investment scams. A lot of you know that one of the main themes of my channel will continue to be, really looking at the scams, the schemes, and everything in between, including the rare opportunities for generating cryptocurrency commissions, and really helping you guys as a marketer, because that's what I'm good at, plug into systems and automate generating leads and attracting the right audience that will be interested in whatever it is you want to promote. In fact, I'll have a link under this YouTube video if you want to plug into that. But I like how, someone comes in and responds, and it's really the community culture, because it helps move us into the rest of this discussion about the pyramid question. He said BCN looks like a Ponzi. So he says BitClub Network looks like a Ponzi with the mining front. Now, some of you listening to this may disagree and may think BitClub Network is awesome and that it's not a Ponzi. And I don't want to get into the argument specifically of BitClub Network, but I want you to understand this interesting, and it moves us into the next discussion really well. There's an interesting thing going on in the entire cryptocurrency market where different groups of people think different things are pyramid schemes, and other groups don't. For example, Jamie Dimon and many of his banker friends that are very well educated, and anybody would have to admit very experienced in business in general, in traditional business, think Bitcoin is a pyramid scheme. And I have another video, on this channel that talks about that. But does that mean Bitcoin is a pyramid scheme just because Harvard and Yale and decades-long experienced bankers think it is? No, that's their paradigm, that's their perspective, and maybe they have a motive, or maybe they just have a skewed perspective. But just because they think it is doesn't mean Bitcoin is a pyramid scheme, but they think it is because the price goes up as more and more people enter in at the bottom. As new people enter in their money, it makes more people who are in early more money, and that's why some people, some bankers, some highly experienced business people think that Bitcoin's a pyramid, but it doesn't mean it is. It's a perspective. Really important to understand. And here in this community, a lot of people think something like BitClub Network is definitely a Ponzi or a pyramid scheme. Now, some of you listening may disagree. It's kind of irrelevant to my point. There is a definite definition for what a pyramid scheme is, and I think we really need to spend some time understanding that. So here's one definition. I'm going to hit you up with three solid ones that all kind of refer back to the same thing. A Ponzi scheme or a pyramid scheme is a form of fraud in which belief and fraud's a key word, guys, in which belief in the success of a non-existent enterprise is fostered by the payment of quick returns to the first investors for money invested by later investors. So people coming in at the bottom, if you look at the diagram up here, more people coming in at the bottom, and that's the money that helps pay the people that had already come in before. But it's the fraud that's the key part of this. And to get a little bit more into detail, let's look at this definition from Wikipedia. A Ponzi scheme is a fraudulent investment operation where the operator provides fabricated reports and generates returns for older investors through revenue paid by new investors. Guys, you know, P3D, power of weak hands, FOMO 3D doesn't match these two definitions at all. There is no fraud whatsoever. There's no fabricated reports. There's no pretending that there's a legitimate business involved. It's a smart contract. It's a new innovation, like Bitcoin. It's a new concept. And so, yes, of course, just like Bitcoin, as new people come in, it can increase the price. As more and more people buy Bitcoin, as the demand for Bitcoin goes up, you know, of course, the people that got in earlier are going to benefit from that. And that's why a lot of bankers and Yale and Harvard educated people with decades of business experience call Bitcoin a pyramid. But that doesn't mean it is. It's a new concept that transcends the old models. Does that mean that there aren't, you know, cryptocurrency related and branded pyramids? There are, and Ponzi's there are, but they're like this definition, like a fraudulent investment operation. It's not what P3D is doing, guys. It's important to understand that. You may not like it anyway, but you can't call it a Ponzi or a pyramid. Here's another definition, like we're hitting them from every angle. A Ponzi scheme, and sometimes that's called a pyramid scheme, is a fraudulent investing scam promising high rates. These guys don't promise high rates of return with little risk to investors. They don't promise there's no risk, and I've seen them tell people not to do it. I've seen the developers here tell people, and it's really the culture they fostered. Now, some marketers might go out there and misrepresent. I haven't seen it though, but it could happen. But the culture that they foster, that they repeatedly, you know, hit over and over again, is, you know, completely different. They're just talking about how the smart contract works. And for those that don't know, I'll run through that real quick. But it's very different than a fraudulent investing scam promising high rates. They're not doing that with little risk. They're not saying that, and they're not even creating a culture that repeats that. So that's really important to understand. Let me real quickly hit a couple other things here. First, I promised to show you a case study. So I'll go into the P3D site. And in this case study, we have 8,100 P3D. That's about 68 Ethereum. Now, as P3D goes up, that's worth more Ethereum, and you can just cash it out real easy. Lots of videos on that. A lot of you are probably familiar with that. And this, so this person is number 15 in, let's see if we go here. If you go to this other site, you can look this up. So 15th, and looking to make a move into the 14th position. But you can see all these stats. You can see what's going on. It's a game, and again, the game is who's going to get scared. Like when it's going down here, like let's look at the 1 minute chart. When it's going down, who's going to get scared, just like in the crypto world, and get weak hands? We've all seen, even for months at a time sometimes, some of the well-known cryptocurrencies do this, right? And who gets weak hands? And those who get weak hands lose, because the way this smart contract works, for those who don't know, let's maybe span this out a little bit more. I'll go ahead and look at the whole view. You can see it really shot up here to over 20,000 Ether in the contract, and it started to go down. Now it's like down to 5,000, almost, yeah, a little below 5,000 ETH in the contract. But as soon as FOMO 3D launches, it's kind of anticipated that this could shoot up again because it's tied to it, it's connected to it, in that those who, this is my understanding, I could be wrong because they haven't given a lot of details, but it sounds like those who have P3D are able to stake on the game of FOMO 3D as spectators. And then people are going to come in to the FOMO 3D game, which is separate, and actually play the game. which I don't know is like gladiators. I don't know. I've heard there's going to be serpents. I have no idea. That's not why I'm here. I'm not really the gamer type, and I don't really fall into that particular culture. But I'm a marketer, and I love the integrity that these guys are demonstrating. I love that they're creating smart contracts that work. I love that they talk about just what the smart contracts are designed to do, and they don't, hype it up, and they don't promise things, and there's no promise of returns, and there's always a mention of risk, and it's a legitimate, just kind of game culture. And I think it's just this huge opportunity in terms of the ecosystem that they're creating of all these smart contracts and the spinoffs that can be created. So I won't go into too much more detail about this, other than just to say, for those that completely don't know, that when you, like if I were to sell these tokens here in this case study account, if these were to be sold, then those that are still in the contract would get what are called dividends, divvies, which are paid out in P3D and are actually paid out in Ether and can be converted back into P3D if they want to get more. So those who sell are out, right? But those who remain are getting dividends as others are buying in or selling. And that's another thing that's different than a pyramid, is like in Bitcoin, everyone benefits if there's more buyers who come in, which is more pyramid-like. I'm not saying it is, but it's more pyramid-like. Here, even if someone sells, there's a benefit to those still in there. So even as there's less and less people, there's rewards. So it's just this whole new concept. And what I found that it does is it trains and teaches people how to be better investors from an emotional perspective and not be so emotional in their decisions, because it really trains you to think twice before you sell, because you're charged 20% Ether when you come into the contract, and that's what's paid out 10% to 10% when you come in and 10% when you sell. But they like to show it to you, the stats to you, as if it was 20% right off the get-go, so that you're not confused later. So basically just think of it as 20% to get into the contract. And then if you just stay in the contract, it's rewarding you, because the longer you stay in it, like for example, if we go back here, if let's go ahead and like look at the 1-day chart, kind of shows a little bit better. It had gone up. But if this goes back up and then it goes down and it goes up, it's paying divvies to those that have strong hands who stay in the contract. It really starts to become something different than like a pyramid. It's become something different than just what the price of the token is. It starts to become something that rewards those with strong hands, and then have kind of it actually becomes, some people refer to it as like a universal basic income concept, because you're getting paid these dividends on a daily basis as people come in and out of the contract, but not just in, like Bitcoin, which is more of the pyramid structure. It's very, very interesting. But again, definitely not a pyramid. Cannot be said to be a pyramid, because it doesn't meet those definitions. It doesn't meet any of those definitions. They're not pretending to be a business. They're not giving false information. There's no fraud involved whatsoever. There's no scam, because a scam requires fraud and misleading. Nothing like that. It's a new concept. And if the definition of a pyramid or a Ponzi is simply, those that came in early benefit as more and more people come in, and if everyone sells and everyone loses, well, then you could say the same thing about Bitcoin. So obviously that alone isn't the definition of a pyramid. The definitions that I just read are the best, definitions of a pyramid and a Ponzi, and this simply does not meet it. Now, you may not like it, whatever, you may not want to participate, that's fine. But one thing's for sure, it is different than anything that's ever existed before. It's a smart contract that works, and it does what they say it's going to do. And now they're moving on to building more value for those who hold P3D by expanding the ecosystem into FOMO 3D, which is this whole new type of different kind of game. And those with P3D are going to be able to, apparently, I might be wrong on this, so again, they haven't given a lot of really specific information, but I'm just speculating, but it sounds like those with P3D are going to be able to stake on those playing the FOMO 3D game, like the audience, and be able to win when the person you staked on, or the team that you staked on, it's not going to be teams, wins. But if you have P3D, you can't lose, apparently, from staking, because it's staking. So really, really interesting. Okay, and then again, of course, this whole ecosystem they're creating, and as this goes on, this could go back up. And if it does go up one more time, because it's still very, very new, it's only like a month and a half, 2 months old. But if it does go back up, it's going to build huge confidence, and this might become like a universal income kind of concept where people just store their Ethereum in here, trade their Ethereum for P3D and just earn divvies every day. It's a very interesting concept, no question about it. Okay, one of the things I wanted to mention, people get really emotional about those that are in P3D, Power Weekends, and even other programs. This will say, there's a lot of gambling in cryptocurrency too, but I don't see a bunch of people going around angry and upset for people that are gambling with their cryptocurrency. So I just want to get it out there that if there's a program or that comes along that's being honest about what they provide, I don't think there's any reason to get all excited and emotional and negative about it. If they're being honest about what they provide, they can't be worse than people who are gambling cryptocurrency. In fact, I would say Power of Week hands down is 10,000 times more valuable than gambling, and offers significantly more chance for success. And there's a lot more behind it, like a lot more intelligence, a lot more value. And yet I don't see a bunch of people jumping up and down crying about all these people losing money gambling cryptocurrency every day. And by the way, it's legal in the United States federally. There are some states that have laws around it and that it might not be legal in, but it's like not a big to-do. And yet people are making a big to-do about these new concepts coming out like Power of Weak Hands. I just think it's silly. You're just not understanding what's going on. If a contract or if a program is actually delivering exactly what it promises, that shouldn't be an issue whatsoever. I think where people are getting confused is things like BitConnect came out there, and it really misled a lot of people and burned a lot of people. And people are confusing some of these other programs with that, but it's not the same thing because they're actually promising what they deliver. And adults are choosing if they want to participate or not. Completely different deal. One other thing I want to mention on that topic is if you go to CoinMarketCap and you start looking at some of these coins and you start reading their white papers, you realize there's a lot of pyramid Ponzi schemes in here. There's a lot of organizations in here, people that clearly, did their in ICOs every day. I mean, you guys know this, that are clearly just there to make money and take money. Some of them have taken way more in than they ever needed to implement their goal. Did 10X really need $80 million for their ICO? And they're actually one of the more reputable ones. And then are they really qualified to make it happen? We'll see. When you have 80 million, you might grow into it, right? But I mean, a lot of the whole point of Power of Weak Hands, they had kind of a satirical site. They've kind of toned it down a little bit because people didn't understand it, people didn't get it, but they had a lot of satire on their site because they were really being satirical about that, saying, look, there's so many schemes and scams in cryptocurrency, and they were teasing about it and so forth, and people misunderstood that, like the pyramids, and people said, oh, it's a pyramid. They're kind of calling the whole, they're saying that a lot of the coins and tokens that are being traded on a regular basis are pretty scammy, and that this is a legitimate smart contract that promises what it actually delivers. So I think they have a point on that. And in fact, if you go to Binance, you can scroll down and see several tokens that they've removed because they've been called out as being scams. Some of you have heard about those, and there are a lot of them. And ICOs every day often are clearly scams. Of course, there are a lot of diamonds in the rough, and there's a lot of good cryptocurrencies out there that have a real basis behind them, real teams behind them that have the experience to make something happen, teams that didn't raise more money than they needed to, who stopped the raising of funds because they had enough. But there's so many more examples that have really been downright schemes, and people aren't getting too hot and heavy about those and screaming about those. So here's a smart contract that works the way it says it does. They're building an ecosystem. They're creating an SDK, which is going to give developers a toolkit to be able to build off of this ecosystem. I think it's something to watch. And again, from what it sounds like, if we go back to this here, it looks like this might launch here this month. It says next weekend. I don't know if that's this coming weekend or the following one. Okay, guys, I'm a marketer. I'm not a techie guy, but I love projects that are intriguing, and I like integrity, people that are building it and behind it. That's what I look for. I'm not always right, but as I get more and more into crypto, I call it out better. I think these guys at least got their their intentions in the right place, and they've proven that they can create things and do things. So I'm interested to see how FOMO 3D turns out and what the SDK turns out to, in terms of what other developers are going to create out of this and what this ecosystem is going to turn out to be, and how that impacts the P3D and FOMO 3D price and so forth. I don't know if I'm going to play the game. I'm not really that kind of a, I'm kind of more of a serious type of person, just the way I am, and they're more of kind of a lighthearted, fun group, fun-loving group, and I think that's cool. But I guess what I want to leave you with is what I am good at is generating leads with systems, making things simple, lots of leverage, so that you can promote other programs that you choose to and generate lots of commissions with it. I've created a system. There's a link underneath this video if you want to check it out. If nothing else, you're going to learn a lot about other ways to go about generating cryptocurrency commissions if you're involved with any kind of programs that you choose to be involved with. The system that I created focuses on generating cryptocurrency commissions with some specific programs, things that are common like Binance and Ledger and Trezor that have affiliate programs, but also an Autobot trading software that is really, really awesome. But you don't have to pay anything to get involved. So if you want to check that out, you certainly will learn a lot. Go ahead and come on in and look at the system from behind the scenes and how I and so many people that I work with generate lots of leads and lots of cryptocurrency commissions without having to chase these programs, but really kind of be in the driver's seat and automate it and be able to build a relationship with our audience over time. Like I've got a leads list of tens of thousands of people. So if you want to learn how to do that, tap into that and benefit from my marketing, even if you're not good at making videos and that kind of thing, be able to use my marketing, go ahead and click the link you find underneath this YouTube video and come on in and take a look. All right, well, let's see what happens with FOMO 3D. I'm excited about it. I'm hoping it launches this month. I'm really curious to see how this thing unfolds. I'll see you guys soon.